Mazrukta.
Welcome you all to the inauguration of Paragon 2013. As someone rightly said, there's nothing more beautiful than seeing your baby grow. True to its name Paragon, which means pollination in Sanskrit, it aims to pollinate young minds with seeds of knowledge and to stimulate an independent and holistic thought process in the minds of budding managers. We now request our chief guest, Mr. Prahlad Kakkar, the Dean and the Vice Chancellor, to light the lamp and open Paragon 2013.
May I request the dignitaries to kindly take their seats at the dais. Dean, School of Business Management, NMIMS, has done his PhD in the area of finance. He is a merit holder of the Institute of Cost and Works Accounts of India. He holds a master's degree from the University of Calcutta. Dr. Sarnial possesses graduate level teaching and academic administration experience over 25 years. Prior to NMIMS, he held important positions of Dean Academic Program at Management Development India and Joint Director of Institute of Cost and Work Accounts of India. He has also headed the EMBA program at SP Jain Center of Management, Singapore. May I now request Dr. Debashish Sarnial to welcome Mr. Kakkar with a bouquet and deliver the welcome address.
Thank God that I'm being escorted by an intelligent, good-looking young lady who I can give this to. I've always wondered why male guests are offered flowers when they prefer flavored condoms.
Chancellor, Dr. Rajan Saxena, respected Chief Guest, Mr. Prahlad Kakkar, my faculty members and dear students and staff of NMIMS. It's a great pleasure for me to welcome Mr. Kakkar to this inaugural session of Paragna. The theme this year is Ignite Mind, Catalyst for Change. A right theme for today's scenario, and I really look forward for the 4 days of our Paragna event that's going to start from today onwards. A lot of events have been lined up, and it's a great work has gone behind it for last 6 months, I know, and I wish them all the best. And I also take this opportunity to welcome all my students present over here and across the schools and from across the country who are coming and participating in various competitions. And with this, I will not come in between you and the speaker. So thank you very much once again for being here, and welcome to you all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Rajan Saxena is Vice Chancellor NMIMS University and former Director of IIM Indore, SP Jain Institute of Management Studies and Research, ICFI Business School Gurgaon, and Dean of Narsi Munji Institute of Management Studies, Mumbai. He has 39 years of professional experience in management education, research, consulting, and institution building. He is an alumnus of Shri Ram College of Commerce, Delhi. He did his PhD work at Delhi School of Economics in marketing area and was awarded the degree by Delhi University. He has taught at Auxiliary Jamshedpur, SP Jain Institute of Management and Research, Mumbai, I am Calcutta, I am Indore, and NMIMS. He is also taught in the University of Calgary, Canada, and has been a British Council visitor at the University of Stirling, UK, where he was involved in the entrepreneurship program. He is a visiting professor at Pace University, New York, USA. Dr. Saxena is widely respected in the country as a marketing educator and consultant. He has consulted over 50 Indian and multinational companies. Some of his well-known clients are BSES, now Reliance Energy, HDFC, MTNL Mumbai, Agravo, L&T, Parle Exports, etc. He has published 60 articles in Indian and foreign journals. His book titled Marketing Management by McGraw-Hill is today in its 4th edition and is one of the widely used texts in marketing in Indian business schools. May I now request Dr. Rajan Saxena to come and address the House.
Thank you. Mr. Kakkar, Dr. Sanyal, faculty members, and students. Well, let me at the outset say that it's indeed a great moment for all of us, perhaps a very happy moment for all of us, because we have an icon. I may call him as an icon in the advertising world. A man who's behind so many brands that you and I see. A man who's known for some of the most creative campaigns in the country. And, well, obviously, as a marketing professor, I have always enjoyed whenever I have seen him on the television screens or have heard him in some kind of a session or the other in a professional forum. And certainly, he's one name who's very, very popular in the management school fraternity. Well, let me say that it's also a great moment because we are starting our Paragna, the annual event, today. And as was very rightly said, it's truly a seed that was started, that was sowed several years back, principally with a view to bring in students from all over the institution, from all over the country, and get them to really debate, play the games, management games, participate in different contests, as also get an opportunity to bring the visionaries, as also the corporate visionaries, and the well-known kind of speakers, as also the icons like Prahlad Kakkar today in our platform itself. It's a great moment for all of us. The business school has always been in the forefront of organizing some of these kinds of events. And hence I must say that I would like to compliment the student community of the business school for once again doing such a wonderful job. I have been kept informed of how the Paragna was coming through, and I'm really looking forward to a whole lot of events which are going to be there today, tomorrow, and the day after when you conclude. And I will certainly be looking forward to what's going to be happening around in that kind of in this Paragna this year. I would also put this that what is critical for all of us at the business school is to ensure and is to continuously keep on improving our performance benchmark. As it is, the business school has come to a point at which it is reckoned with as a leader within the management education fraternity in the country. Important thing is to really raise this bar further. And almost everything that we do, be it our faculty, at the faculty level, or at the student level, I think everything that we are doing, we must see to it that each year we continue to move the bar up and up. And certainly, it's the only way to move it forward is through creativity, innovation, and looking at things not through the conventional kind of a lenses, but to look at it from a non-conventional kind of a way, a creative way, out-of-the-box thinking. And who would do it better job than getting Prahlad Kakkar only, right? To tell us how some of the kinds of campaigns gets developed essentially through a whole lot of thought processes that get going in it. So once again, all the best. Have a great fun during Paragna. But one change that I would like you to make from next time onwards, I'd like you to stop introducing me. Please. I think if I need an introduction in my own system, then I think there is something going wrong with it. I think by now almost everybody would know that I am a professor. By now everybody knows that I am the Vice Chancellor. By now everybody knows, and if they don't know, they will go on the website and see who am I, in any case. So my suggestion is, please do not introduce me within the institution, within the university, and especially within the business school, because I come from the business school. Right? All the best. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We are privileged to have amongst us today Mr. Prahlad Kakkar. In that case, in that case, I would now like to invite Mr. Prahlad Kakkar to share his thoughts with us and enlighten us with his wisdom and valuable experience.
Managed to get a decent photograph of me finally. One of the reasons why I joined the other side of the camera and advertising was because I always looked like the back end of a bus in a photograph. One that had backed over me, especially. So good to see so many bright young faces. Let's see now what all of you dream about and what your instincts tell you and how you're going to conduct yourselves in the future. Because the world is divided into two kinds of people, especially when they come out from B schools or otherwise. You don't necessarily have to be from B school to actually add value to a world that is only taking away value from others. So always remember one thing in management, especially when you guys are students of it, that in any organization, regardless of how big, how famous, how good it is, 20% of the staff of an organization carry 80% of deadwood. So 80% are timekeepers who watch the clock, and 20% are passionate and just work their butts off. Not because it's work, but because it's fun. So always remember one thing, the difference between work and fun is that you can never have enough of fun, and 5 o'clock ghanti bajati hai for work. So everybody wants to then go home and start having some fun. So just imagine a world where you got to choose a job which was actually something that you would pay for, not be paid for. That is the bottom line. If you would actually pay for doing a job that you would want to do, then would you have a time limit? Would you be clock watchers? Of course not. Because you'd be partying. Now, within that lot, there are two kinds of people also. There are the Maliks and there are the Naukars. So when all of you want to be placed, and I go to all these B schools and everybody's looking in the final year to say, okay, do we have campus interviews? Are we going here? Are we going there? Where did you do your summer training? Which company do you want to be placed with? Which MNC do you want to be placed with? You guys are basically behaving like lalas. Because you want to have your asses covered, because you want to be safe, you want to be paid at the end of every month, and you don't want to do any work. Basically. Whereas if basically at heart you all are entrepreneurs, which is really businessmen, then you are what is called risk takers. Now if you carry the concept of risk into a workplace, there are only two kinds of successes that you will have in an MNC. The people who get sacked in their first month or 2 months of being there, or within 6 months before you get confirmed, are two kinds of people. One who smoke dope and don't come to office, or come to office and smoke dope, or the ones who question their immediate superiors about decisions that are made because you have your own opinion of what kind of decisions should be made. So because you're not given the option of making decisions, but just tick marking, you actually take the onus of taking a decision and protecting it and taking responsibility for it and fighting for it. Okay, so you get sacked. Why do you get sacked? Because you obviously are far bigger risk taker and therefore an inside line flyer than your immediate bosses, who will immediately get rid of you because he feels threatened. Now, being sacked for that reason is the biggest honor of courage and bravery in the business community. So, guys who spend 20 years in a company and plod their way through looking for advancement in their normal sense are knockers. And you all behave like knockers. Guys who are risk takers, who believe in what they've done, right or wrong. See, remember one thing. There are two things I've learned in my many years in a very high risk, area, is that there are no wrong decisions. There are two kinds of decisions. One is which is backed by implicit belief or implicit belief, and the other where you are not absolutely sure of your decision and you abandon it halfway through. Remember one thing in life, and you will learn this very hard lesson very quickly when you're out of your school and not protected, is that when you reach 99% of completion of a job and leave 1% behind and leave it incomplete because you lack the belief, you still get zero. You only get counted when you complete a job. So when you start something, when you start a process, whatever it might be, see it through. Because only then are you counted among the people who've completed what they've done, so that you can be assessed. If you complete 99% of your job, it's not like an examination where you leave out one question out of 5 and you get marked on the balance 4. Bullshit. You get 0. Life gives you 0 for completing 99% of a job. Whether you complete 0, whether you complete 1%, 5%, 10%, 20%, or 99%, you still get a 0. So, when you decide to take a path, for whatever reasons, you must see it through. And if you have to live through that decision, right or wrong, then only do you realize that you have a responsibility. Not towards your organization, not towards your immediate boss, but towards yourself. So, risk takers are people who believe implicitly in themselves and their instinct. Now, when I talk about instinct, it's a very important part of your makeup. How many years have you spent in a B school? How many years? 1.5. That's it. So your instincts are still intact. You see, a B school's job is to teach you that 2 and 2 equals to 4, and if you say 22, you get 0. Life says 22 is the answer. And you can only come to 22 if you're using your instinct. So B school's motto in Latin, Sanskrit, Tamil, whatever you have in front of the door, whatever they might say, eventually means if you have a gut reaction, take a purgative. So the first challenge is, how do you sabotage that way of thinking? And believe me, if you do it directly, you'll get thrown out. So you have to use all your cunning, intelligence, subterfuge to actually turn around and prove that if 2 and 2 is not attempted to be 22, life is not worth it. Because you all are taught how to hold on to a job. Nobody can teach you how to excel in one. So if your ass is covered because 2 and 2 is equal to 4 and your maths teacher says so, you'll hold on to your job and you'll get promoted as by rote. But if you want to be a high flyer, if you want to be an entrepreneur, you can't afford to do that. It takes too long. and it's far too expensive. As long as you're working for somebody else, you can afford to be a drone because somebody else is paying for you. If you're working for yourself, and if you don't set a target at 22, you will have failed from the day you start. So what is this 22 figure? What is this value of 2 and 2 plus 22? Is it tangible? Is it rational? Of course not. But it is highly desirable. Look at every single icon of the business world, including dropouts, including guys who've never completed college and school, who made it big. What kind of value do you add to them? It became much more than 22, but they had to aim for 22 to start off with. So if you guys are happy with 4, then I think you guys are very good at seat warmers. If you are not happy with 4, and if you actually believe that you are more valuable than 4 at any given stage, then you have to only look around you to see what everybody else assesses you at. Your assessing yourself is of no consequence. You are constantly being judged and assessed by everybody around you. Which is why some people are more equal than others. If 2 and 2 was equal to 4, and if everybody came to the same conclusion, why aren't all of you equal? Why are some of you more popular, some of you less popular, so more desirable, more job-oriented, more business-oriented, more entrepreneurship-oriented, and more likely to fail or succeed in life? Value adding starts from associations, friendships, assessment by your family, by your friends, by your professors, by your environment. It starts from there. So there are some people, if you take a vote in this room, who's the most popular guy and girl, you'll suddenly get 1 or 2 people being singled out for that kind of thing. Why? Compared to everybody else, because after all 2 and 2 is equal to 4. So what's the difference? The difference is what you bring to the table. Everybody brings a value to the table, potentially or factually. Now, when you look at it on paper and say 2 and 2 is equal to 22 is a wrong answer, it's acceptable because that's logical and that's rational. If business was rational, then why would there be such few successes and such a large amount of failures? Even within a company like Unilever, if you look at the history, for every 10 products launched after due research, lots of soul searching, lots of God knows what, spending millions of rupees trying to get the product right, with the right imagination to the right people, 9 out of 10 fail at launch stage. 1 out of 10 succeeds. And that one product actually carries everybody else, including the company. At that time, Unilever had one highly successful product which actually supported the company about 20-30 years ago. It was called Dalda. It actually carried the entire company because of the huge success of a product which was unprecedented. All it was a hydrogenated oil which looked like ghee. So it was basically a corn. Okay, so regardless of the track record of multinationals, you'll find that their so-called track record is actually not viable. And that they work in a country like India, like for instance Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola has written off from its books $45 million of losses since their relaunch. Because they know they can never recover it. But they write it in a little column on the side as investment. So is an investment a loss? Or is it taken as a loss? Or is an investment recoverable? Coca-Cola knows that it cannot recover that $44 million because after 5 years, they've now written it off as a loss. They can afford it. Because the turnover of Japan's Coca-Cola, 2% of their turnover is the investment made in India. So they can keep perennially being there as long as they think that strategically one day they're going to screw this country by making profits. And the only way they can make profits is to screw you all, because what is Coca-Cola? It's a carbonated drink with sugar, phosphorus and other things which rot your teeth off. Okay, people here in this room will swear by a brand. They say, I swear I can recognize Coca-Cola blindfolded. Some people say they swear they can recognize Pepsi blindfolded. A third lot will say, we believe in Thumbs Up because Thumbs Up is what our drink is and I will recognize it in my sleep. Bullshit. We did a blind test across the country and mixed up everything and put them into plain glasses. Nobody could make out one from the other. Fact. And when I say nobody could, the flukers did. Somebody fluked it, but nobody actually consistently made it out. Like for instance, if you made it out once, then I redid the blind test with you by changing everything around, you flunked it. So consistently, nobody could recognize the drink by its flavor. So what are you guys talking about? All you recognize is your personal ego association with what the brand stands for. So when we did the campaign, nothing official about it, and Pepsi lost the World Cup to Coke many, many years ago, and they thought it was a disaster because the World Cup was the biggest thing, biggest event that ever happened in this country, then they thought mar gaye. Until some little junior copywriter came up with the thing, says if Coke is the official drink of the World Cup, why can't we be the unofficial drink of the World Cup? Because there are less people who are inside the stadium and more people outside the stadium watching the match. So if you look at the graphics, if you look at the demographics, you'll find 40,000 people inside the stadium and 40 million people outside the stadium. Where's the comparison? So who do we associate with? Do we associate with the people inside the stadium who are privileged and whose fathers are somebody or another who managed to buy tickets in black? Or all the hoi polloi that is sitting there in front of all the TV sets, radios, out on the street, who would rather be in the stadium but they can't afford it or they didn't get the opportunity. So let's tickle their funny bones. Let's tickle their associations and say, हम भी आपके साथ हैं. तो inside the stadium वो कोक पी रहे हैं, चूतिया हैं. आप बाहर हैं, पसीने में घूम रहे हैं, इधर उधर मैच देख रहे हैं, आप असली लोग हैं. आपके लिए पेप्सी है, उनके लिए कोक है. They wipe them out on strategy. I mean, this is the first time in the history of any kind of marketing that the official drink was unknown compared to the amount of talk that came in about the unofficial drink. And it became officially the unofficial drink. And the campaign line was nothing official about it. And it was a success story which it took Coke years to catch up with. They did catch up. But took them years to catch up with that irreverent, young, breaking the rules kind of thing. Who breaks the rules? Only young people. And some old people like me. The problem is I never grew up, so, you know. Now, if you do not experiment with breaking the rules, only remember one secret. Any guys who break rules have to remember one thing about breaking rules. It can't be a tukka. It can't be a fluke. Okay? You don't go to the horse races and turn around and say, Ini mini manamo, ada pada kisne pada, Raja ji ki godi ne pada. You know? And put all your money on it. You know, it's a science. You have a record of the sire line, dam line, how many times the horse farted, who's the jockey, you know, what is his indisposition, you know, is he got diarrhea or is he okay, you know, does he have flatulence which you can then use as an afterburner? Yeah, because if he's eaten chanas and cholas and moolies and he lights himself up, then he helps the horse. because it's highly inflammable, because it's got some kind of smelly gas in it which is inflammable. So you have to do research, but you have to do it cleverly. About which horse do you think has the better odds? And the good punters hedge their bets, because there is more unknown than there is known. Similarly in business. Whatever you do in terms of research, whatever knowledge you have in front of you, finally, there's one guy making a decision. Because what happens with MNCs? Why do 9 products out of 10 fail? You know why? Because decisions are taken by consensus. 9 guys get together with used toilet paper in their hands to cover their asses, and they take the decision of the largest common denominator. Why? Because one guy doesn't want to be blamed for the failure of the product. He wants to take the whole team with him. And the company can't sack the whole team because the product has failed. So unless you're a lallu and you take the blame, you'll never get sacked. But they never make a success of it. Because how does a decision on advertising sound like? Most of it sounds like the minutes of a meeting. Doesn't sound like an advertising decision. Doesn't sound exciting, doesn't sound irreverent, doesn't sound young, doesn't sound like anything. It just sounds as boring as 8 fuddy-duddy men taking a decision which is basically based at covering their asses. So you have management techniques. Have you guys ever been taught about the most successful management tool for furthering your careers, which is called brown nosing? Ever heard of it? Nobody teaches you brown nosing? Sir, as a faculty, I'm sorry, but this is the most important part of the management training. When you have your tongue firmly up your boss's ass, your nose turns brown. And more people succeed in working for other people, especially MNCs, through brown nosing than through hard work. Believe me, it's hard work. Because every morning, to practice brown nosing, you have to stand in front of the mirror after you brush your teeth and try and touch your nose with your tongue. How many of you guys can do it? How many of you guys can touch your nose with your tongue? Try, right now. Come on. It's a shortcut to success. Can you do it? Anybody hands? One guy? Girl? Nobody? Shit, you're all failures. You have to work your asses off for the rest of your life. Just imagine. So in management school, there are many things that are taught officially and many things that are taught unofficially. Okay? And what you learn unofficially is as important as what you learn officially. Very few people will tell you about brown nosing because it is now, though a practiced art, is a forgotten term. It's a very British term for understating ass licking. It's very subtle, it says brown nosing. So most people who don't know what it's really all about think it's some respectable term. So you will remember this in your futures because you will remember the guy the duffer sitting next to you, he gets promoted over you. By God, he can touch his nose with his tongue. Because his tongue reaches parts of his boss which your tongue cannot do. So, when you add a value, there can be no value without risk. If you don't follow your gut, you see, nobody can explain to you your gut. I'll tell you what your gut is. You have left side brain, right side brain. One side is logical, one side is not illogical, but it is random. Okay? But to have a random brain which functions, it has to be loaded with trivia. It has to be loaded with trivia. What we call trivia is life. Most mathematicians, calculators, scientists, etc., who haven't gone into advanced astrophysics, which is abstract, think that logic is 2 and 2 is equal to 4 and that is fine and it's sacrosanct. And the whole of science and the whole of the world is built around that logic. Unfortunately, it's untrue. Because the trivia that floats in your illogical side of the brain is 90% of your brain. Your logical side of your brain is only 10% of it. Or you use only 10% of it in terms of everyday decisions. When you feel that I know that this is the right decision without an explanation for it, which you can explain in mathematical terms to your team, to your boss, to your client, etc., then you get bounced. Which means essentially you shouldn't be working for somebody else, you should be working for yourself. Because then you're not answerable. Then you follow your gut and be as successful as you want without having to explain to somebody why you followed your gut. And a lot of us feel frustrated in life because we are prevented from following our instincts. Because people ask you immediately, prove it. How are you going to prove that 2 and 2 is equal to 22? Except after it's done. After it's done, you can. Because today I'm going to show you a sample of work that is 22. And you can only believe it when you see it. But you can never believe it when it's on paper because you'll never take that risk. So it has to jump off the paper into reality for you to believe that 2 and 2 is equal to 22. And believe me, it's true. Because I've lived life that way. With no regrets whatsoever. So, when you complete a job and you look back, you are always assessed for the value that you add to it. And how unlikely it was to be successful. Now, if you go back and trace the history of successful products all along, you will find that all case histories that you study are lies. Why are they lies? Can anybody tell me that? Why are the case histories that you study of success stories are lies? No. Only those people who write it who had nothing to do with it. Because they take credit for it. Once something is successful, there are many credit takers who give no credit to the people who actually thought of it. Because they're senior, because they are usurpers, because they have made no value contribution, they need that value. The guy who actually contributed doesn't care, because if he's done it once, he can do it 100 times. So he's very insecure in his risk-taking. The guy who never takes risks, jumps somebody else's idea or credit, because he can only do it once. You can't keep jumping all the time because people will catch you out. So when you have, somebody has a great idea and you jumped it, you will know the symptoms of that japping because he's never generous with it. He's very secretive. He never shares it with everybody. He never tells you how he arrived at it. He never tells you, I didn't know. The biggest, knowledgeable, most creditable fact of a human being is to say in front of a public forum, I didn't know. I stumbled on it. It wasn't calculated. The moment a person says, I didn't know or I don't know, then what is the next step in his mind? To want to know. When you say to yourself, I don't know, then what is the next step? So let me find out what it is. So your journey starts from I don't know. Your journey ends at I know. So if you jump somebody else's idea, or somebody else's plan, or somebody else's whatever, success, then you are pretending you know. If you are pretending you know, you're dead in the water because you're not learning anything anymore. But when you say you don't know, you start a journey which is endless. Because till the day you die, you're searching for more. Because it's addictive. It's like a drug. The pursuit of knowledge and the pursuit of excellence. It can never leave you. But first you have to dissolve your ego, not jump anybody else's idea, tell lies and say, I know. You know means it's the end. Because if you already know, there's nothing more to know. But if you don't know, the whole world is out there for you to know. And it's such an exciting journey, trust me, that it's, I just went to the Think conference in Goa, and looked at the speaker list, and I didn't know most of them, except for De Niro, who was an actor. And I said, who are these guys? And then I started reading their profiles. And I found that Think, Tehelka, which sponsors Think, was born out of conflict. Okay, it was born out of persecution and conflict. They did a sting operation on George Fernandez and the BJP, and they weren't even a magazine then. They were a video, thing. And they were bajowed for it. They were run to the ground. They went bankrupt in about 3 years of solid chasing courts because the government decided to screw them. So when all the dust settled and they sort of got out of that relatively, bankrupt but completely, still with their spirits intact, they wrote to 200 of their so-called sympathizers who had told them or written to them and said, keep it up, you guys are the right guys, you're on the right track, don't worry about the government, eventually the government will go. Government change, life will change for you. And they wrote back to those same guys who were their database and said, we're going to start a magazine because we feel that it's far more impactful than television. And we don't have the money, and you are going to be our first investors. Each one of you is asked for a contribution of 2 lakhs. So common, ordinary business people who believed in the freedom of an opinion scraped together 2 lakhs each. 200 people put in 2 lakhs each and actually started the Tehelka magazine. So having started in conflict and on a basis which was unviable, it is today, I think, one of the most successful and honest magazines that you can read because they don't take sides. They're not sponsored. They're truth at any cost because they know finally that they will go back to the people for support and not to governments and not to businesses who have an agenda. So they are truly free. So when they selected their speakers, they selected speakers who came out of conflict. Conflict with the governments, conflict with whatever was known to be the truth, conflicts with people who disagreed, conflicts of people who questioned. And so the bunch of speakers that we heard over the 3 days was mind-boggling, to say the least. I mean, there was a guy there who was an Indian doctor from New Zealand who had 2 degrees. He was an anthropologist, plus he was a cosmetic surgeon. But his speciality was skin. And he gave us a half-an-hour lecture on the history of skin and how skins became different colors and how they became higher in vitamin D and lesser in vitamin D, and how polar bears who are supposed to be white are actually black, and how gorillas that are supposed to be black are actually pink. So it was fascinating to apply that to the naked ape. Who's the naked ape? You all. And to apply that anthropologically, it just blew my mind. The possibilities of opening your mind up to the fact that all skins came from the same skin type and that everybody is related because they all came out of Africa was in itself, it just blew religion out of the water, it blew bias out of the water, it blew fairness versus darkness out of the water, it blew everything out of the water. You had to realign yourself and say, shit, what do I believe in? Why do I believe in all this shit when it's a load of crap? Because scientifically and imaginatively, he proved that all skin types are the same, that different climatic conditions actually over a couple of 100,000 years ruled the skin type that you have. And his question was to the audience, which was very interesting, why did Milkha Singh lose the Olympic race? And he said, was it lack of dedication, lack of training, lack of wanting, lack of hunger? What was it? He said, none. It was because of his skin. It's just that his skin type didn't have enough vitamin D in it for him to finish within the first 3. So just sort of, you put in a question like that. I remember my history teacher putting a question to us. And she said, you all study dates, you all study this, and you all are sleeping in my class, and you bunk, and you do all sorts of things. So we're going to make this class interesting. I'm going to ask you a question, you go back home, research it yourselves, and come back to me with the answer. If Robert Clive had lost the Battle of Plassey, what language would you be speaking today? Bullshit. French. Because the French was the other power that was challenging the English. They are the ones who supported Tipu Sultan. They were the ones who supported, what's his name, the guy who fought Clive. They are the ones who trained his army. There was a chap called Dupleix. You remember Dupleix? Finally, he lost all over the place and he was relegated to Pondicherry, which is why Pondicherry speaks French. So if Robert Clive had lost the Battle of Plassey, and if you traced the history of all the battles that happened, you would be speaking French and not English. So that became very interesting. So suddenly you all woke up and said, shit, history's got some relevance. It's not just some rubbishy past. It has a future. And you learn from it. So anything that you learn from becomes interesting because it tickles your brain cells and makes you sit up and get awake and turn around and say, hey, I don't need coffee, I can stay awake. So you have to read between the lines. How many of you read the newspaper every day? Shit, not enough. Your greatest education, your greatest modern history education is the newspaper. It equips you to argue. It equips you with an opinion. See, remember one thing. Nobody reads the newspaper and quotes from it. Everybody reads the newspaper and forms their own opinions because of what you read yesterday and what you read the day before. What you see on television, you forget immediately. What you read as a printed word, as a discipline, remains with you. You remember it for days after that. So when you collate all that experience in your left side, right side brain, which is trivia, which is so-called trivia, you actually make sense out of it. And then you suddenly realize that politicians like Ajit Pawar, politicians like Bhujbal have a track record because they've been actually tracked. And every day they cannot go back to their chronology. But your mind goes back to their chronology and say there's a pattern. Everything has a pattern. And corruption has a pattern. And you can put your finger on it. But you have to read the newspaper. Nobody's going to give it to you as a subject, as a textbook, as a whatever else it is. Because the moment it comes to you as a textbook, you're going to say, oh fuck, I have to read this all over again. I don't want to read it. When it comes spontaneously to you, and you have to start deciphering it because it's not absolute. No truth is absolute. Everybody's truth is their own. It's what you make out of it. And read between the lines. And it's one of the most creative exercises you guys can ever get into, is to read the newspaper every morning. Believe me, it's a terrific discipline. It equips you to argue. It equips you to quote. It equips you in a conversation. It equips you to patao chicks. Because you're not a Dumbo who's just pumping iron in some gym and saying, mere dole shole dekhe. It equips you for repartee. It makes your brain a weapon. Because you're thinking on your feet all the time. It's the greatest weapon you ever had, not your six-pack. Trust me. So, into the real world, there are two decisions that you have to make. How long are you going to work for somebody else? And how consistently do you make notes of what you would have done if you were the boss? Because if you don't do that, you'll get used to being a knocker. And a knocker only wants to do a job at 4 because it's not controversial. He'll never lose his job. But he'll never do brilliantly either. So if you want to know what your real instinct is to always turn around and question what everybody else has done and say, okay, what would I have done? Make a note of it. One day, that is your journal. You'll go back to it and you'll say, hey, I was more often right than wrong. Because you can compare it with what has actually gone down. And it makes a lot of sense to a lot of people, especially those who question the state of what it is. Today, you are in a world which is moving so fast. You have no idea, you guys, that we have changed in the last 10 years as a culture, as a society, as economics, as people, as our interpersonal relationships between cities and villages. We have changed more in the last 10 years than we have done in the last 100. Do you understand that? In 100 years, we haven't changed as much as we have in the last 10 years. You would have never dreamt that brands like Ericsson, which were number 1 in the world, are not heard of anywhere except in Gujarat after us. You didn't get that. You have brands like Nokia, which you thought were invincible, dying on you. Why? Because they could not cope with the change. So your greatest weapon is flexibility. Your greatest survival kit is the capacity to change. Your greatest survival kit is knowledge. Constant, continuous questioning of the status quo. You cannot hide behind the status quo anymore. The status quo is a very flimsy underwear which will be ripped off any moment. So you constantly have to think one jump ahead. You're constantly having to anticipate, ab kya hoga? So you're on a movie which you don't know who's done the murder. You have to constantly be thinking. And there's no complacency. आप सरकारी नौकरी भी लीजिए, आजकल सरकार भी गिरने वाली है. So there's no protection. By the way, I may as well announce that I've registered a name for a very interesting product, which I mentioned when instead of the bouquets, and it's called Red Riding Hood. What do you think it is? It's a flavored red-colored condom. So I want to vote your hands. How many of you think the name will make it work? Oh wow, not bad. Without looking surreptitiously around, say, "Hey, condom dena." And even women can carry it. Because always remember, the campaign theme for women, especially nowadays, is if it's not on, it's not on. Because you guys are going to be the victims, not the guys. Because if you look at the ratios, it's 10:1 in terms of any kind of infection. So if you don't care about yourselves, then nobody's going to care about you. So, I'm going to now show you work which I believe, which I've collected over the years. Some of it is 20 years old. Remember, all advertising has an expiry date. Why? Why does advertising have an expiry date of 6 months? Especially today. No, because everything changes. Perceptions change, fashions change, culture changes, your hopes change, everything changes. Okay? So, and what is advertising about? Is advertising about today, yesterday, or tomorrow? Correct. Advertising is all about hope. Advertising is about dreams. And you don't dream about yesterday. You dream about tomorrow. What is your dream? What you want to be tomorrow? How you see yourself as tomorrow. If advertising becomes today, it becomes basi. So if your dreams constantly change and your society changes and technology changes, then your dreams change in rapidity. So most advertising which is dated is because it's dated, because it only talks about immediacy, about self-gratification. Okay? It's like sucking your thumb. And if you only suck the same thumb and don't change thumbs, you'll get bored. So advertising is constantly a treadmill which you are anticipating dreams. So who are the best creators of advertising? Dreamers, obviously. So if you are punished constantly in your school days or your college days or your MBA days for daydreaming and looking outside the window and not paying attention to your class, advertising is your forte, my friend. Because then you will get a job which will pay you obscene amounts of money to do nothing but dream. Everybody else's dream, because you then have to latch onto the common denominator. I wanted to start a kind of a channel where everybody contributed their dreams. So it was called Dreamcatcher. And if everybody wrote in about their dreams, which they remembered, if they remembered them, then we could actually collate those dreams and figure out how everybody thought, what motivated them, what were the most important thoughts. Because when you speak, you moderate your speech with what you think is impressive. So you never speak the truth. But dreams are the absolute truth because you have no filters. So your dreams are the real truth, what you are, what you want to be, how you see yourself. And it's the greatest insight into human behavior that you can ever get if you can collate dreams. So there you are, guys. I've given you an idea. The next entrepreneur is not going to be Bill Gates. He's going to be the dream catcher. So, I've collected these films over a period of time because I found that they had created a value which was more than 4. And therefore, they completely defied the expiry date. They defied the expiry date because when you create a value which is real, it's forever. It belongs to you. You can lay a claim on it. And it never expires. Value never expires. So when you spend your life creating value for yourself, for your family, for your country, for your company, it has to be 22, it cannot be 4. Because otherwise, you're just like everybody else. You're not special. So let's see these. Chalo, who's going to operate these commercials? Some of these commercials are 20 years old, huh? So you can imagine how long ago they were and how interesting they were at that time.
Just play it, sir?
No, play one at a time. There's a menu here, which you can go on to. Start with that.
Stand please, sir.
Yeah.
There's something so real in everyone. There's something so real. Ask anyone. It's you, it's real, and the feeling is right. There's something so real in the taste of life.
Cadbury's Dairy Milk, the real taste of life.
Just imagine, 20 years ago, an Angrez company called Cadbury's Chocolate was given a script like this by a man called Piyush Pandey, who was a language copywriter, sitting in front of the toilet because that was the only seat available. And he had to sell to his English bosses in English, which he didn't dream in, he dreamt in Hindi, that wo ladki jayegi dance karte hue in a game of cricket, which is a gentleman's game, and gives her boyfriend who's scored a 6 and won the match a chocolate. I mean, it must have taken a lot of conviction and the threat of harakiri in their plush white office by Piyush Pandey for them to be convinced, "Acha kar le yaar." And it changed the history of the brand. Because they suddenly realized that as a chocolate, they could only sell it during Christmas time. And our population of Christians is 5%. But if they made it chocolate, they could sell it during Diwali time, where 80% of the population sends mithais to each other. So in one shot, they could penetrate a market between the pronunciation of chocolate as chocolate or chocolate. So from there was spawned a series of campaigns from Pappu Paas Ho Gaya upwards to Thoda Sa Meetha Ho Jaye. Today, your Diwali hamper is not complete without Cadbury's in it. At one time, it was never existent. Now, this film started that whole thinking process. But what a fight it must have been for them to accept this girl. Everybody today from the older generation, not you guys, you all are into sex, drugs and rock and roll. So, so all the older generation, my generation people, remember this girl completely. She's indelibly embellished in our minds. Every woman, it changed the way women thought about themselves in this country, because every woman who was too scared to come out into the open secretly said, "I'm her," secretly. Very few people had the guts to do what she did, but they all in their minds would do that. In their minds. Mind changes societies faster than buildings do. So it started a process of change even in the self-belief of women. And this was 20 years ago. So you have no idea what our society was like at that time, especially when it came to women. Chalo, run it.
Hello. Hi. What are you doing tonight?
Me?
Join me for dinner?
Sure.
See you at 8. One black coffee, please.
Ericsson mobile phones. Surprisingly smooth.
Now just imagine at the time this film was launched, it was a very popular film. Ericsson became #1 brand in India, but it was also the #1 brand in the world. What happened to it? How long ago was this? 15 years ago? That's the fate that you guys will have to follow if you're not flexible. So start yoga, guys, from tomorrow morning.
नया सेंटर शॉक हिला के रख दो.
Next.
Excuse me, this pension file of mine, where should I give?
An exciting game of hockey, attacking from the right flank, crosses the central line and intercepted there by Dharampal and deflected to Sukhwinder. Sukhwinder passes to De Silva. De Silva pushes to Mohammad Shahid. Mohammad Shahid takes possession of the ball and scoops it to Fernandes. Fernandes redirects it to Tim and Robinson. And a very close tackle there. And that's an infringement. And once again, attacking from the left flank, crosses center line, wonderful turn, enters the deep, but cleared there by the defender, out of the sideline, and a disappointed retreat into the midfield, and ball finds Stanley. Stanley takes a good look and passes it to Balwinder. Balwinder takes control and sweeps across the field to Rajinder, but Rajinder, without seeing, scoops the ball to Andrews. Andrews misses the ball completely, and ball reaches Pillai. Pillay gently taps to the captain. Captain takes possession. Aimless dribbling, trying to slow down the game. Time wasting technique. And a warning from the referee. And once again with full force attacking from the right flank. Dribbling, crossing the center line. Fantastic move towards the D. Enters the D and a dangerous tackle by the defender there. Referee intervenes. The situation is very tense. Anything can happen. Referee consulting the linesman. An appeal for green cards. The green cards are out. And it's a penalty corner. Push from the corner. Quick collect. Quick finish. And goal! India has won!
Oof, what a game, no? Had fun?
Yeah!
He had right choice, baby.
Hi, I'm your new neighbor. Can I have a little Pepsi?
Yeah, sure. Yes! Oops. और कुछ चलेगा?
नहीं, Pepsi नहीं है तो.
ना, no problem.
You okay in there?
ये ले यार Pepsi.
That must be Sanju.
Sanju?
Hi, I'm Sanjana. Got another Pepsi?
Sure.
This is one of my favorite commercials because Aishwarya Rai's first commercial. And we've had the pleasure of seeing her ever since. Because this is before she became Miss World. And she was a student of architecture. And she was just as jolly as all of you are, except that you all are dressed up like penguins for some obscure reason. So she came with a jhola and one torn pair of jeans and one dirty pair of chappals to my office. And we looked at her and everybody said, wow. And I said, let's clean her up first. Let's see what she looks like underneath all that grime. So we cleaned her up and we did a video test with her and we all fell down. Said, shit, this one's great. And I remember taking her, only her test to Pepsi. And they said, oh, she's not bad. Can we see some more? So I looked at them and said, they don't make them in twos. That was historical. Next page. Yeah, that one. Yeah.
lions. Lions can keep you in. Lions can keep you out. Lions can keep you out. Some lines you don't understand. Some lines you can erase. Some you can't. Some lines you wait for. And some lines make you wait. Lines can keep you alive. Lines are with you till the end. But the only lines that matter are the ones you make. The new Safari Dicor 2.2. Reclaim your life.
गरजे दिल ये टोले झूम के बोले तारे छूले प्यास बड़ी है आगे बढ़ ले अरे खोल के बंधन तोड़ के ताले ये दिल मांगे मोर
ये दिल मांगे मोर. Aha! This is a very special commercial because when we made this commercial, Pepsi had actually outgrown the idea because they were into the World Cup and they wanted to get on with the World Cup ideas. And we sort of insisted that we wanted to make this commercial because we felt that it was going to be very special. We argued and Pepsi said, we don't have money. So I said, we'll do it for whatever money you have. Don't worry about that. And then we asked Sachin to come for half an hour. And that's all he came for the commercial. And we changed the commercial from high-rise children, well-to-do families, to Basti kids. And Pepsi was very unhappy with that. And they said, no, these are not our target audience because they can't afford Pepsis as frequently as everybody else can. So I told Viva at that time, I said, Viva, it's not really about Pepsi. It's all about dreams. It's about Dil Mange Mo. So who do you think has a bigger dream? A high-rise kid who has everything, or a Basti kid who wants to grow up to be Sachin? So he says, that's not a fair question. That's a trick question. I said, so whatever it is, it's the truth. So she said, okay, I do what you want. But just make sure that they don't look dirty. So I said, fine, we'll give them a bath. And then we looked for a tree. I don't know why we looked for a tree, but here again, it's completely illogical. The team said, what tree? I said, let's get a tree which is stunted and which is the only tree in the landscape so that they're playing under this tree. So I said, but why? I said, I don't know. It's just that whenever I close my eyes and see this film, I see this stunted tree. So we looked all over the place. We went to Nasik, we went here, there, we couldn't find the bloody tree. Finally found it outside Arya Mill Colony. After 3 months of searching. But somehow I feel today vindicated because I feel that without the tree, the film wouldn't be the same. There's something inexplicably that the tree adds to the film, which just holds it all together. The other, of course, is the kids which we found under the tree playing cricket. So we use them in the film. And the third point was that I told my cameraman, I said, you're going to get one chance because these kids don't know they're Sachin. They only know they're wearing Sachin masks, and that one guy among them is Sachin wearing a mask. They don't know who he is. And he's going to come out of the van and he's going to come and join them. And at the last moment, he's going to pick up his mask and he's going to drink a Pepsi. And you're going to get one reaction. And they're not actors, and you'll never get another reaction again. Because by that time, they'll know who he is. So I say, if you don't get the shot, I'm going to kick your ass. So poor chap sort of fielded properly and hung around. And sure enough, we got that reaction. That kid's reaction was real. He wasn't an actor. He was just real. He couldn't believe that Sachin Tendulkar was standing in his basti in the middle under this stupid tree for real. And, you'd be surprised what they did. Everybody else would mob him, These kids, these basti kids, were so odd. They went up and touched his sleeve to see whether he was real. It was almost like pinching herself and saying, am I dreaming? That was the level of awe that they held him with. And to me, I think this is the greatest film made on Pepsi ever. Because what the team did after that was that they said it's incomplete. It needs a jingle. So we hadn't written a jingle initially. We just written some music to it. And they said, I said, what kind of jingle do you want? We want Raghuveer Yadav to sing the jingle. So I said, are you fucking mad? He's bloody sitting somewhere in Bihar. Where are you going to go looking for him? As it is, we wasted 3 months looking for the tree. Now you're going to waste another 3 months looking for Raghuveer Yadav. The film is never going to be, used finally. So no. Oh, I said, okay, you just find somebody who sings like Raghuveer Yadav. There must be lots of guys who can copy him. So they said, okay, and I went off. And 1 week later, they showed me the jingle, and I said, see, there was the guy who was just as good as Raghuveer Yadav. So they looked at me and said, it is Raghuveer Yadav. So they disobeyed orders directly, found the guy because they thought that he was going to add a value to the film which nobody else could. And they just did it quietly without telling me, And that is what ownership of a job is really all about. Always remember one thing, when you do a job, you don't do a job. You either own the job or you run your own company. So if you can't own a job, there's no point working for somebody else. Because when you're working for somebody else, you carry no responsibility and you carry huge power without any responsibility. Because you are only allowed to say no. You're never allowed to say yes. Think about it. Till your middle management, the only power that you will have in an MNC is the power to say no. You will never have the power to say yes, unless you have the guts. You know why? Yes means responsibility. When you say yes to something, it's your baby. You have to prove right through your management system that you believe in this, and you'll defend it at the cost of your job. So it's much easier to say no because you have huge power without responsibility than to say yes. Chalo.
पीछे देखना साइड स्क्रीन पे सब हाथ हिला रहे हैं चल अभी क्या करूंगा क्या
मैक्स दीवाना बना दे क्यों मर गया तू
of trying to convince people about which is what it takes the risk of being sometimes wrong and admitting it and taking the consequences for it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for enlightening us with your thoughts. I would now request our Honorable Dean to facilitate Mr. Kakkar with a memento as a token of our gratitude. On behalf of Team Paragana, I would now take the opportunity to thank Mr. Prahlad Kakkar, the Dean, the Vice Chancellor, faculty members and students for being part of the inaugural ceremony. Thank you very much.